Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Keele Burgin, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Wholly Unraveled, a Memoir. Now, Keele is an entrepreneur, activist, mother of three, author, and filmmaker. Her story of survival and self-discovery has inspired a life dedicated to impacting tens of thousands of women across the globe. She has served in leadership roles on the boards of multiple nonprofit organizations that empower women. Keele made her mark in the business world by co-founding two companies, taking her first one public. She's the founder of Be, a company that curates tribes of women that come together to build their lives and relinquish the patterns of behavior that hold them back. So let's welcome to the show, Keele Burgin.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
You know, what a joy it is to have you here. And my goodness, I mean, once I picked up your book, I mean, from page one, I could not put it down. I mean, it is so well written.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so great to get the feedback. It's been so fun to hear how people have responded to it and taken it to heart. And maybe, hopefully, the goal would be that they tell their story too.
Well, and we were just talking about that, and I really applaud you for being so courageous in telling your story and encouraging women to tell their own. We all have our interesting, unusual, wacky lives, and some people more than others. At what point did you decide it was time to start telling your story?
Well, I've traveled a lot abroad and the U.S., and I work with women. I work with them in peer support groups. I work with them for vocal empowerment and microcredit and all of this. And I've been hearing their stories for decades. And I thought, it almost got to the point where I couldn't ask them to tell me their story anymore until I told mine. And so I just started writing it down. And my husband at the time, I used to write sticky notes all over and leave them all over the house. And he ended up buying me a beautiful linen box, and said, just start putting them in here. And I started to put them in there, and I realized I really have to tell this story.
Well, I'm so glad that you did. I mean, there's a lot in your book that I was able to personally relate to. I'm sure a lot of women are feeling the same way, men, women, people who are reading your book. When there's some really difficult parts of your story, and you start off talking about red jeans and just how something so simple could really turn into a really horrible day.
Yeah. I grew up in kind of a Catholic cult-ish situation where, it was weird because my parents were very wealthy. My dad was a very successful attorney. So there was a lot of money flowing, but this Catholic cult was really confusing because it was really basically my dad trying to be God. He's kind of a classic narcissist, and he was the leader of the Catholic cult. And so there were times at dinner, I would have to pray in tongues to be released from the dinner table, or maybe slain in the spirit, or things like that. And so red jeans, because women were called the handmaids of the Lord inside of this community. And so they wore skirts down to the floor. And I remember, my mom being told she can't highlight her hair anymore, and then she couldn't wear eyeshadow. And then, it's kind of like the last color dripped from her face when my dad said she wasn't allowed to wear lipstick anymore. And so when I got caught with red jeans, that was a big one.
Well, you take the reader through that experience where it makes the hairs on your arm stand up, and it's just heart-wrenching to read at the same time. But a lot of people go through these different types of experiences, and you dealt with it in a very different way. I mean, you weren't crying. You basically, you were at some point, but you really kind of just was resilient through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think if I could give myself a word, it would be resilient. But we all are resilient, and it took me so long to realize my worth, decades of just not believing in myself. And I really believe in myself now. And I want people who read Wholly Unraveled to say, like, I can transform my life too. It's really a book about overcoming adversity and healing and transformation and hope. And that was the why on why I wanted to do it, because I want people to feel hope.
Well, I'm glad that you did. I mean, I know you talk in your book about how, you just never knew what was going to set your dad off. It must have been confusing as a child.
It was very confusing. I knew that my family was different than other families that I would watch. And it was confusing. I lived across the street from the beach, and I would go and sit under the boardwalk and dig my feet in the sand and just listen to the people walking above me on the boardwalk. And I would be like, they sound normal, but I didn't really know what normal was, And I mean, I was grateful to have a few people in my life who, like Shirley, my nanny, who basically raised us. And, she gave me that, like, she would tell me I was resilient. She would call me little ox and say, you got this, little ox, you're strong, but it was very confusing to have a childhood where you were told you have no voice. And, my dad used to say, at the dinner table, he'd say, no one under 30 is allowed to speak for 24 hours. And that was really confusing because I had a lot to say and I had a lot of questions and I wanted to know about the world. And instead I was silenced a lot.
What was it? I mean, we've kind of gone over a few things, but what was it like growing up, being in this Catholic cult?
It was terrifying at times. It was, like you said earlier, confusing. And it was, it was sad. I was sad because I felt like I was missing out. I knew I was missing out. I wasn't allowed to watch TV or listen to the radio or eat sugar or have a soda or, things. I wasn't allowed to know what the coolest song was on the radio, and things like that. Like it was kind of it was sad.
Yeah, I can just imagine. I mean, it in your book, you really outline things really well, and it's so well written. The readers transported there with you, and you could feel what you're going through at that time. And things are very, it's just very real. You in your book, you talk about going to somewhere else place. What was that?
Well, when I knew something was about to happen, I would kind of trick my brain and say, I'm going to go somewhere else. It's like I called it my somewhere else place. So I would, for instance, interestingly, Grace, who's in the book, and I were talking about a month ago, and she said, "Do you remember we used to hide in the basement, and your dad would be up above on the first floor, and he'd be pounding around and maybe looking for me or something, and we'd be hiding so I wouldn't get hurt." And she said, it was so interesting because you used to always play a game, like, well, let's pretend we're with, whoever I had a crush on at the time. And so I would really just try to help myself to be in kind of a different space than the scared space that I was in.
And there's so many things that you detail in your book. And one is, talking about your dad pointing a gun at you. And I think a lot of people would find that just horrifying. How did you feel during that, and how did you deal with that?
Well, it's important. It was important to me writing the book that I didn't save the reader. Like I wrote these chapters of my life with intense reliving experiences, and that one in particular was excruciating to write because I was terrified. I mean, my father hit me so hard. I was in the middle of Lake Powell and he hit me so hard I fell off the boat, and then he chased me in the boat and then made me go for, I don't know, a 3 or 4 hour hike in the desert and said he was going to kill me, and he had the gun. And he kept taking the gun out and he would point it and then he would put it back and then and I was 12 years old. I mean, a 12-year-old little girl. And I thought I was going to die. I thought he was going to kill me that day. And I will never forget that feeling. I've done a lot of EMDR therapy around that day, and I feel as healed as I can be around that. But one thing I can say is that little girl, my little girl, that day, I promised myself I would look him in the eye, and I did. I looked him in the eye as he pointed that gun at me, and I thought, you're going to look at me while you shoot me, and then thank God he shot the bullets over my head instead of at me.
That's just unreal that someone would even, fire a weapon around a child. I couldn't even imagine that. It was just really heartbreaking.
Yeah, I hope it never happens to another person.
Yeah. In writing all this, because you really do bring the reader right there to how everything's happening and your feelings. Was it cathartic in any way for you?
I think it absolutely. After I wrote everything, I was exhausted, but I was also really energized as well. It's like it was finally clear that I had put all this blame on myself that didn't belong there. I kind of gave it back to him, if that makes sense, and said, this is on you, not on me. And what else it did for me is I truly, truly have forgiven him. And the irony of it is that it was harder for me to forgive my mom because I am a mom and I protect my children and I love them unconditionally, and I would not allow the things that happened to me to happen to them. And so it was harder for me to forgive my mom, but I've forgiven them, and I feel really happy in my life. Like I want that to be the takeaway, is that there is so much happiness after you work through your traumas or abuse or neglect or whatever it is, unworthiness. There's such a beautiful life on the other side of that. And to allow yourself to be seen, to really be seen for all that you are, is extremely powerful. And yes, it's vulnerable, but I don't have any secrets. And that's a gift that I've given myself. And I would encourage others to take that risk and say the things you don't want to say out loud and release that shame and pain and fear and whatever that is that you're bottled inside.
Yeah, I mean, you went through a lot of life experiences. Sometimes people will have one thing that happens to them. You had many things that happened to you. And just to come out the other side with forgiveness in your heart and hope and resilience, I think helps a lot of people go, you know what, I can get through what's going on right now.
Oh, fantastic. That's exactly what I want. If I can affect someone else's life in that way, and they say, if she can do it, I can do it, then I am as happy as I can be. That's my goal. That was my goal for Wholly Unraveled, is I want people to know that they deserve a fantastic life and they can get it.
No matter what happens in your lifetime, you can work through those things. And some of it's hard.
Yes, and it is hard. And you know what? It's not going to be easy, but it is worth it. And I love Flannery O'Connor says, if you've walked through your childhood, you have enough to write about for a lifetime. Like, we all have the junk from our childhood, right? It's there, but we don't have to let it define us.
Yeah, we can choose to, I don't know if it's really move beyond it, but definitely move through it.
Yeah, I mean, with my therapy, I did Emdr therapy, like I said, and it's kind of an interactive psychotherapy. And as I was doing that, I was like, it's like you can take these traumas, these things that happen to you, whatever it is, name it, and try to turn it into something beautiful. Like, for me, it's that everything that happened to me made me who I am, and it gave me a very intense, very beautiful intuition. And so that's an example of taking something that's awful and saying, well, here's what I got from that. And I don't have a trauma response anymore when I talk about the things that happened to me, because I've healed to the point where, yes, of course it happened to me, and yes, it was awful, but awful things happen to lots of people, and it's what we do about it that makes a difference. And I will not let him win. I will not let those people that hurt me win.
I applaud you for that, and I applaud your courage and being the person to say, hey, you know what, I'm not letting these people win. I choose forgiveness. I choose healing. That's all. This other stuff is not going to happen.
Thank you. It's the only way, really, to a happy life, right?
For sure. And this next part I'm bringing up, I know it's difficult, but I think it's important because our listeners, if there's been somebody that's experienced this, to hear that there's hope on the other side, I think is so important. I mean, you talk about being raped in your book, and that is, just, oh my goodness, it's just so heartbreaking. How was it? Was it like reliving the whole experience, writing that? Um, did you find that
Yeah,
it helped you cope a little bit more with it?
I would say it was definitely healing to write about it. What I tell people is be careful when you the Me Too movement has done so many wonderful things, and it's not about whose abuse is worse, right? Who can scream louder? This happened to me, and he did this, and he did that. It's about healing, and so it's like there's a time for silence, and there's a time to speak. And like I'm writing a piece right now and doing a talk about the power and the price of silence, because there's power in silence. And I healed in silence. But the price I paid for being silenced was enormous as a child. And the irony of those two, the price I paid to be silenced as a child, and then, decades later, I go to a place for a year and I don't speak, except at meals. And that's where I healed. So I want people to hear, like, what would work for your healing? Like, tiptoe into that. Find a therapist that you trust. Find a friend that you can trust and tell them. It doesn't have to be to grab a microphone and scream it, because that may just re-traumatize you. Make sure that when you talk about it, you're ready and you're not going to be re-traumatized by it.
That's such important information, because I mean, a lot of times when you open that door, a lot of things can come flooding through, and you have to be prepared.
You have to be prepared, and you have to have someone behind you who's got your back, and not just, yell it in a microphone and then turn around and go, oh God, now what?
Yeah. And I find it really fascinating coming from a childhood where, um, speaking and being heard wasn't there for you. But later on, you found that healing, and at the Madonna House, where you could just be quiet.
Oh, it was so life-giving. I mean, talk about the juxtaposition of religion too. It was, that was a Catholic retreat center. They call it a lay apostolate, and there's no indoor plumbing or refrigeration. I mean, it was freezing up in northern Ontario, Canada. It was the elements were tough, but it was very structured, Catholic, Byzantine, but it was so full of love. It was about love and service. While I was, cleaning disgusting handkerchiefs from everyone in the community or sorting beans, someone else was making my lunch or cutting wood so that we could have a fire that night. Or like, it was all about service of others. And when I would get to my darkest times, I would go do something for someone else, because it would pull me out of myself and gave me a little more worthiness.
I love that. Well, and I can see where that would be a really healing place, kind of coming back to like the baseline of who you are and kind of rebuilding, who you are and where you're going to go from there.
Oh, it was the greatest gift. It was the greatest gift. And I don't know to be honest, I don't know if I'd be alive if I hadn't gone there. I was on a really dark path, making really poor decisions. And I'm so grateful that there's places like that in the world where you can stop and heal.
During that time of silence, what do you think is one of the most important things you learned about yourself?
That's a great question. I learned my essence. I learned that what is inside of me, it took me decades to live it, and I still try to live it. But what I learned was my essence, and I say it still every day. I am Keele. I am worthy, powerful, connected, and sensual, experiencing life with abundance, laughter, and vulnerability.
I love that. I love that. I think having that as a mantra, I mean, how empowering is that?
Oh, it's been fantastic. And when those words first came out, I thought, I don't know what any of those mean. I did not feel any of them. But over the decades, I feel those. I live those now. I can say that I have walked through all of that, and I've come out the other side, and I love my essence statement, my mantra, as you call it. It means the world to me. It is who I am.
So what does your spiritual path look like today? Because I know you grew up Catholic. I did too. I'm sure things have changed since then.
Absolutely. I am not Catholic anymore. I honor those who are, but it doesn't work for me. But I do love to go in churches when I travel and sit there and feel the hundreds of thousands of people who have sat right there and prayed for something. You know, there's a beautiful energy around that. But my spiritual path is incredibly important to me, but it's more meditation and Kundalini yoga. And I am religious, pardon the pun, about doing that work for myself, the meditation.
When people read your book, what are some of the things that you want them to understand from your book and take away from that?
I'd really love for them to take away that they deserve happiness. That no matter what happened to them, no matter what they decided, no matter what bad decisions they made, that they are worthy of a fantastic life. And that their childhood or their decisions don't have to define them. And that it's not easy to walk through some of that and to re-architect your life and to relinquish the patterns that don't serve you anymore, but it is so worth it because there's so much happiness to be had.
You know, coming from you and the difficult path you've walked, I think a lot of people can find their own inner resilience and be able to move on their path because of that.
And that would be my greatest, besides my children, that would be my greatest gift, if people could heal.
I think we all need a little bit of that. Yeah. Well, and you talk in your book about some of your dark days, and I would like for you to share that for our listeners, just so they can also hear about the path and the transformation that you've had.
Oh, yeah, they were really dark, especially when I got quiet. When I got to Madonna House and was silent, there was nothing, I'd spent decades filling myself with, anything that adrenaline, drugs, alcohol, anything to make me feel. And when I got there and the silence just felt like a wet, dark, scary blanket because I had to admit what happened to me. I had to walk through those things and really come to terms and reorganize how I thought about those because I thought they were all my fault. I thought I was raped because it was my fault. I thought my dad tried to kill me because I did something wrong. It was all on me. And when I got silent, it got really loud in my head, and really dark. And I thought maybe I don't want to even be here. But gosh, working through it, I had to go through that darkness to really appreciate how beautiful life is and how stunning we can pick up. And every day when that sun comes out, when we get up, we get to decide what we want to be that day. What do I want to commit to today? What do I want to be today? How do I want to serve today? But it was, the dark night of the soul for a while before I got to that point. I just hope people can hear hope, because there's so much that you can do to transform your own life.
Yeah, I think your story provides a lot of that. And it's important to talk about these things. Here we are, September is National Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. We look at this and it's like, we've got to have a whole month to talk about this. So people are starting to go, hey, you know what? When things are happening and maybe I'm doing that dark night of the soul and things get dark, I don't have to choose that. There is hope out there.
There is hope. Yes, there's so much of it. There's so much. And it's baby steps too. Just do something for self-care today. Do something that will change your life a tiny bit. Take baby steps if you're not ready for the big ones. But do it because it's worth it.
So when you were writing this book, you started with all these sticky papers all over the place, and and your husband helped you put them in a container, so they're kind of getting together. But what was your writing process like? Because you touched on so many things, and you had such a journey. It must have been really tough at some points to write certain chapters.
Yeah, it was very difficult. But it was also, I was falling into my words. Like, it was so incredible to just feel, I never considered myself a writer. I'd never written before. And I couldn't imagine that I was going to publish a book, but it was real beautiful to just sit. Like, we don't give ourselves that time to just sit and think. I would stare out at I had a little writing studio, and I would stare out that window for hours and just think. Like, it was like I gave myself this beautiful gift to just come to terms with my own life and who I am and what happened to me. And yes, it was difficult to write it, but that's okay. I hope, my great hope is it's in service to someone else.
I know me personally, when I've written things that have been difficult parts of my journey, they tend to be a long times when I'm also working through certain things. Was that the same way for you?
I had to heal to a certain level before I would be able to put the book out. I wouldn't have been able to put this book out 5 years ago. I wasn't healed enough. So the things that I'm going through now in my life, I'll write about afterwards. That's kind of how it works for me, is that I get to a certain level of healing and then I can write about it. Like, I want to write about the things that people don't want to say out loud and that are difficult to talk about. I want to write about divorce. I want to write about, adultery. I want to write about like hard things, hard topics, things that put you on your knees, and let's talk about it so that we can heal.
I think that's the first step in, and you probably agree with me on this, is in healing is really shining the light on it and having these open discussions.
Yeah, let's take that shadow and put it in the light. That's one of the things I do in my business at B Tribes. We take our shadows and we turn the light on them, and we say it's okay, and you are not going to be judged. You're going to be held accountable with love and grace, and you're going to heal.
So you're a mother now. You work with different nonprofits, and you're out there doing all these great things. How did your journey take you to that place?
Oh, I had an amazing woman show up in my life soon after I left Madonna House. And her name is Connie Ming, and she's spectacular. She was the founder of Friendship Bridge and of Starfish Impact, which is now called Maya, in Guatemala. And she said to me, because I didn't know how to really operate in the world after being silent for a year, she said, "Come with me to Vietnam." And so we went to Vietnam, and she showed me poverty. And I thought, I'm done. I want to serve women for the rest of my life and help empower them, whether that be through microfinance like we do with Friendship Bridge, or through peer support groups and education and vocal empowerment like we do with Maya. It was just, I feel very blessed that she kind of scooped me up, and I was on those boards for 15, 20 years.
So what type of work do you do now? I know you also have a group that's called B Tribes.
B Tribes is my passion. I love it. What we do is we curate tribes of 12 women, and we put them in groups, and then we walk through a 6-month curriculum, and it is phenomenal to see them change. It's literally it's so rewarding to see what they do, and it's basically the B experience. It's a unique curriculum, and it's about the relationships within the tribe. And it changes the trajectory of their lives, and it opens them to just move along their unique path, and to establish their worth and direction, and all, again, with this wonderful accountability, graceful accountability. And we have, one of our tenets is that we are all the teacher and we are all the student. There's not one person up here who knows everything. It's like when I watch these women integrate with the tribe, I mean, they're from all over. It's not regionalized. They're from all over. And they literally, I watch them relinquish the patterns that hold them back, and they re-architect their life just the way they were meant to live. It's been an incredible gift to watch.
So who's an ideal person to be part of the Bee Tribe?
I believe it's literally any woman who has a desire to have the fullest life that she can live. It's any woman who has that. And it's people who want a tribe of women. Like, these tribes that come together are impenetrable. I mean, they are, after that 6 months is over, we start with a 4-day retreat so that everyone's together. And we fly to a beautiful place. I rent an entire place in Mexico, and we really get to know each other, and we commit to each other that we're going to be on this journey together. And then we walk through it together, and there is radical transformation going on. Some people have, decided to have a baby. Some people said, I'm not going to have a baby. Some people have decided to move. Some people make career choices. One woman said she didn't think she was going to be around in a year, and that Bee Tribe saved her life. And so it's all sorts of people, people who want to love their life.
That is so important, especially today. I mean, we have so many people that feel so disconnected, that have so much trauma, and to be able to be in a community where you can work on yourself and make yourself better with women who also understand, I think is priceless.
It's priceless. I couldn't agree more. It's this call to adventure. It's kind of modeled after Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and just relinquishing those things that don't serve us anymore. And unconsciously, we've held on to them, or consciously, and it's affected all of our decisions. And so we identify them, we look at them, we say, thanks for being here, and you're no longer welcome here.
Well, Keele, where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your book and Bee Tribe, and be part of your community?
Oh, I would love that. I would love to hear from people. I'd love to hear from my readers. KeeleBurgin.com is one way that you can find me. I am also on Instagram under Keele Burgin. And if you want to know more about Bee Tribes, it's beetribes.com.
That is awesome. Well, Keele, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much. This was really enjoyable for me too.
Well, Keele, it's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course to talk about your new memoir, Wholly Unraveled. Wholly Unraveled is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. If you'd like to connect with Keele again, you can at her website, keeleburgin.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.